There was once a young man who lived in a small village, surrounded by hills and open sky. From the outside, his life looked quiet, but quiet was not the same as peaceful. Each morning he woke, moved through his days, spoke to people, ate his meals, and returned home at night. But inside, his mind was never still. And without noticing it, his thoughts began to decide how he lived. Thoughts followed him everywhere. Thoughts about things he had said years ago, moments he wished he could change, each one feeling unfinished, even though nothing could be done. When the past loosened its grip, the future took its place. What if this doesn't work out? What if time runs out? What if I never find peace? His body rested when the day ended, but his mind did not. Even in silence, it kept moving. Over time, the noise began to weigh on him. Sleep became shallow, smiles came less often, and the quiet moments he used to rely on stopped arriving. Calm felt like something he remembered but could no longer reach. One day, he heard of an old man living in a quiet village in the hills. People spoke of him simply. They didn't say he had answers. They said he had calm, not something he explained, but something people noticed after leaving. Visitors would arrive tired and leave lighter, not because their lives had changed, but because something inside them had settled. The young man decided to go, not because he expected miracles, but because he was tired of carrying a mind that never rested. After a long journey, he reached the village. At the edge of it stood a small house, covered in greenery, resting quietly in the open air. On the porch sat the old man. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't moving much at all. He simply sat as if time had slowed around him. The young man approached and spoke softly. "My mind never stops," he said. "I am always thinking. I want peace." The old man opened his eyes and smiled, not kindly, not proudly, just calmly. Without many words, he stood and walked into the yard. He filled a glass with water until it reached the very edge. Not a drop more. He placed the glass into the young man's hands and said quietly, "Walk to the end of the village and come back. Do not spill even one drop." Nothing else was explained. The young man didn't understand why, but he understood that it mattered. He began to walk. The path was narrow. People passed by in both directions. Voices called out. Dogs barked. Life moved all around him. At one point, a man brushed past his shoulder. The glass trembled just slightly. His breath caught. His fingers tightened around the glass. For a moment, he felt the urge to look up, to see who had passed him, to react, but he didn't. He slowed his steps instead. His eyes returned to the water. The surface shook once, then settled. His hands steadied. His steps became smaller, each movement careful, deliberate. There was no room for wandering thoughts, no space for memory or worry, only the glass, only the step he was taking. He walked on quietly, fully, until he returned. Not a single drop had spilled. The old man looked at him and asked gently, "Tell me, did you see the children playing on the road? Did you hear the dogs barking?" The young man paused. Then he understood. "No," he said, "I noticed nothing else." The old man nodded. While his attention had rested completely on the glass, his mind had not traveled. It hadn't returned to the past. It hadn't rushed into the future. Fear had nowhere to enter. Regret had nowhere to speak. The mind had grown quiet, not because it was forced, but because it was finally here. Peace had not been given to him. It had been revealed. The sun began to set. Birds crossed the sky, returning to their nests. The young man bowed his head in gratitude and began the journey home. Nothing around him had changed, but he no longer carried a mind that needed to be everywhere at once. He now knew something simple and lasting. Peace is not found by escaping life. The question was never how to quiet the mind, but why it was always trying to leave. Some stories aren't meant to be rushed. They're meant to be returned to when the mind feels heavy again. And when that moment comes, You may find more quiet reflections waiting for you here.